Invasive species are a non-native organism that have the potential to impact an ecosystem. The level of impact depends on the species or organism. Invasive species can be found globally and redistributed on a local, regional, and international scale. 42% of endangered and threatened species are at risk due to invasive species in the UK. Many species are spread by humans, however, in most cases they are introduced unintentionally. A contributing factor to their successful population growth is often that they have no immediate predators and native wildlife cannot adapt fast enough to compete.
Even here in Essex we have invasive species. For example, we have the grey squirrel, which was introduced to the UK by the Victorians. Secondly, we've got the mink, which was introduced primarily for its fur in the fur industry and was released into the wild by animal activists. It's then become a top predator and has influenced other species within the ecosystem. Lastly, we have the Burmese python, which was introduced to the Everglades in Florida through the pet trade and people just releasing them because they've become too large to keep.
The method used by species to relocate and spread is known as pathways. Long-range dispersal occurs due to hitchhiking on other organisms. Let's have a look at the possible hitchhiking pathways that invasive species have used in the past. Many of the pathways invasive species use are a cause of human interactions with the environment. This can be direct or indirect. Invasive species can spread by good intention, unknowing of the repercussions that occur later on in time. For example, pets that have been released, like the green parakeets found in London. Lionfish are a colourful venomous marine fish and are found natively in the Indo-Pacific. They have now found themselves in the Caribbean, the southeast coast of the US, and in some parts of the Gulf of Mexico. There are a few hypotheses into the origins of the invasion. The leading idea is that lionfish had been dumped into the region from aquariums as they outgrew their previous enclosure. Another was from ship and ballast water. The lionfish larvae were transported in intercontinental trade ships' ballasts. Once the ships reached their destination, the ballast water was released, causing the larvae to be dispersed in a new system. These fish have few to no natural predators in the Atlantic. This allows them to take greater risks as the predation stress is much smaller.
Invasive species can even be found here in the UK, even as close by as the Colne Estuary in Essex. For example, the Pacific rock oyster, New Zealand pygmyweed, signal crayfish and mink. Here is Dr. Alice Lown discussing her research and the differences between the native and invasive oysters.
I've been at the University of Essex. I did my PhD here. I was working on the European native oyster, these guys here. So how do the non-native species of the oysters differ from the native species that we have here? So the native oysters, as you see here, are quite flat. They're also only found in the subtidal area. The rock oysters are a lot deeper shelled and they're found a lot more intertidally. So you do have a little bit of niche overlap, but there is quite a lot, mostly separated due to rock oysters being exposed at low tide. Do we actually want to do anything? Should we go out and cull them? The rock oysters, some areas have been looking to cull them where there have been an issue, but actually they're providing a livelihood for so many people that just harvesting them alone helps to control their populations.
Plants can also invade habitats, including freshwater systems such as Abberton Reservoir. The New Zealand pygmyweed is an example of this. Pygmyweed has three forms: submerged, emergent and terrestrial, and can grow from single nodes and 5mm stems, making it an aggressive weed. It is often found in unshaded areas. It originated from New Zealand, where it is endemic, but is now also found in northern to mid-Europe, where it is now naturalised but still considered invasive, and was first recorded in Essex in 1956. Pygmyweed was introduced as an oxygenating ornamental pond plant in the late 1970s, but has since been dumped, escaped from gardens, or been transferred to new locations by birds. However, it completely overtakes whatever habitat it enters, and is putting many species at risk, notably the UK's rarest freshwater fish, the Vendace, which is only found in 2 UK lakes. It forms dense patches on the surface of water bodies, shading out other plant species and leading to oxygen depletion, and therefore a decline in fish, frog, newt and invertebrate numbers. There is evidence to suggest it stabilises the edges of water bodies. More active eradication methods include both biological, chemical and mechanical means. Glyphosate treatment attempts to wipe the species from an area. Dredging or hand-pulling pygmyweed and then burning the organic matter also achieves this. Biological and environmental treatment involves introducing mites to destroy the plants, grass carp to graze the weed, or flooding the area with salt water. Beavers have also been introduced in some areas to lower nutrient levels to reduce the growth and spread.
We spoke to Juliette D'Amelio, a student at the University of Essex who studies the invasive North American signal crayfish, which is found across the majority of the UK and even in local water bodies such as Abberton Reservoir. The signal crayfish was introduced into the UK for the fishing industry by the UK government in the 1970s. It evaded fisheries and spread throughout the water and land systems, becoming an invasive species that is outcompeting the native white-clawed crayfish. White-clawed crayfish used to be found all over the UK, but since the invasion of the signal crayfish, there has been a decline in their population of around 50 to 80% in the last 10 years, and is now classified as endangered by the IUCN. The success of the signal crayfish is that it can be found in freshwater systems, rivers, and estuaries, allowing them to inhabit a wide range of habitats. Fast reproductive rates are another factor making the signal crayfish very successful compared to the native white-clawed crayfish. Additionally, the invasion of the signal crayfish brought a harmful plague that spread throughout water systems, which white-clawed crayfish are more susceptible to. The signal crayfish is not only harmful to the native crayfish but also to humans. The signal crayfish live under rocks or in burrows in riverbanks that can be as deep as 2 meters. These burrows weaken the riverbank and can be an added cause to flooding in the UK. Not only do they have a negative impact on humans and the native white-clawed crayfish, their burrows can be disrupted to the water vole population as they also burrow in the riverbanks. Methods of eradication include biosecurity, which has been found to be the most useful tool against the signal crayfish. Despite trapping, reducing some of the adult population has not been very successful as it leaves the juvenile crayfish to mature and reproduce faster. Although the signal crayfish is non-native, predation plays a role in controlling the population, since it is preyed upon by other animals such as salmon, eel, otters, and mink.
Mink are also an invasive species and are found across the majority of the UK. They can exist in both freshwater and saltwater habitats along the edges of lakes and coastlines. The American mink is native to North America and was introduced into the UK in association with fur breeding farms in the 1920s, and the last farm shut in 2003. They were purposely released by animal activists and fur farmers who claimed they could produce free-range fur. The mink is causing negative effects, primarily due to its voracious predatory nature and ability to outcompete other species. They are good swimmers, and females are small enough to enter water vole burrows and take their young. They can also decimate entire ground nesting bird populations. Their success also affects humans economically, since they can affect fish farming stocks. However, not everything is negative. You could say that they have a positive impact in some ecosystems, since they eat the invasive signal crayfish. There are both natural and anthropogenic steps in place to mitigate the effect mink have on habitats. For example, increasing otter numbers are reducing the mink population, since they can be hostile towards the invasive species. More active measures such as shooting, trapping, and snaring also provide both more selective yet still effective methods.
Invasive species are a problem globally, present in almost every ecosystem and are the 5th cause for global biodiversity decline. The effect they have depends on the services they're providing. These can have positive or negative impacts on ecosystems. Adding to the global invasion problem, climate change and temperatures rising is creating a more suitable environment for species that could not survive there otherwise. Citizen scientists are our best chance to continue to monitor, regulate, and if needed, eradicate the invasive species population.
With recent political changes, the biosecurity of the UK could be at risk due to the legislation surrounding invasive species that could be affected after Brexit. Although this allows for new legislation to be put in place for the UK invasive species. As Jane said previously, citizen scientists are really important. They allow scientists to get an understanding of what invasive species are present and their location.